What about your relations with the West Berliners that you meet? Do you discuss things with them, talk to them?
Yes, I think we mostly discuss political problems, and there are some discussions. And
are you able to understand their point of view?
Yes, I also try to understand their point of views.
I'm a Berliner, and so I can say that it's a terrible situation here in Berlin, because the separation of Germany you can see best here in Berlin.
My mother was born in a part of Berlin, which is now Eastern Sector, and so her friends live in East Berlin, and naturally we meet them and they come here and we go there.
They are people like you and me, and they are just living in a totally different part of your city, and in a certain way you are separated from them.
Do you get a feeling of being shut in, living in a little sort of island of Eastern territory?
Yes, I've got this feeling very much, and I hope that the situation will change.
And I think that one day we will have the unification of Berlin and one Germany.
These people are East Berliners. These are West Berliners. They live in a city of crisis, and this year crisis may come again.
Good evening. This is Berlin. Behind me, the Brandenburg Gate. North and south from it runs a line that cuts the city in two. Here, on this side on which I'm standing, is East Berlin, capital of the East German Republic, the German Democratic Republic, as its official title is. And over there is West Berlin, an island of Dr. Adenauer's Federal German Republic, completely surrounded by the Eastern Zone. Over here, the Allied powers are represented by the Russian army, over there by the British, French, and Americans. But what about the people of Berlin, the people who live in this divided city? How does it affect them in their daily life?
On both sides of the dividing line, Berliners will tell you that they can spot in the street anybody who comes from over there. But I can tell from the look of the streets themselves which half of the city I'm in. This is Stalin Alley, and the name will tell you where we are, even if the shop windows leave you in doubt. Sensible shoes for fashionable workers. The buildings which house these shops are only 8 years old, but already the plaster is falling off the front. A lot of East Berlin building is unit construction. Even the windows are glazed before the walls leave the factory. They're building in a hurry. They started later than West Berlin. Wherever you look, prefabricated blocks are rising on the ruined streets. But there's nothing prefabricated yet about the East Berliners themselves. They're still flesh and blood. I talked to a young girl in the park in front of the East Berlin Town Hall.
Do you go over to West Berlin much?
Yes, I go sometimes to see relatives of mine, or sometimes, but not very often, to the theater or to the cinema.
Do you feel that there are two sort of different races of Berliners growing up on account of the division of the city?
No, I wouldn't say that. Till now, not.
Well, what about your relations with the West Berliners that you meet? Do you discuss things with them, talk to them?
Yes, I think we mostly discuss political problems, and there are some discussions, and sometimes we don't find an opinion.
You don't find an opinion?
About the same opinion about a thing.
You can't agree?
Yes, that's what I mean.
Are you able to make them see your point of view?
It depends on about what we are discussing. Sometimes...
Are you able to understand their point of view?
Yes, I also try to understand their point of views. But sometimes I think I find out that they aren't as much interested in political problems as we are, I think. Especially about especially young people.
In the streets, another contrast between the two halves of the city strikes you. The West German Federal Army is banned from West Berlin, but the soldiers of the East German People's Army have the freedom of their half of the city. The Humboldt University stands in the eastern sector. It was founded in 1809 under the aegis of the Humboldt brothers, William and Alexander. In their day, the university had no attachment to any particular creed or school of thought. I talked to some of the present-day students about their divided city.
What do you personally think about the Berlin problem?
Well, first of all, I'd like to mention that I'm not a Berliner, but I feel that something must be done to overcome the division, to overcome the cleavage, and I should like to say the problems which are developing between the people of East and West Berlin. That's what I feel.
Oh yes, it's a very interesting question because I'm a Berliner, and so I can say that it's a terrible situation here in Berlin, because the separation of Germany you can see best here in Berlin, because there are a few districts, one is French, one American, one Russian, and now we have two parts, and so it is terrible, and I think that one day we will have the unification of Berlin and one Germany.
I, for myself, going through West Berlin every day on my way to the university, and well, you meet those people in the railway, in the S-Bahn, in the tube, and well, they are people like you and me, and they are just living in a totally different part of your city, and in a certain way you are separated from them.
Do you resent the existence of this totally different part of the city?
Oh yes, of course I do.
A little under a mile from the university, straight down Unter den Linden, we're back at Brandenburg Gate, and one of the main checkpoints for traffic between the two halves. The strictness of the check varies with the prevailing political climate. Just past the gate, an eastern sentry keeps his eye on the west, and a sign warns you that in 8 yards you'll be out of the democratic zone and into the wild western sector of capitalist warmongers. With the Brandenburg Gate behind you, you leave East Berlin, and you're now entering the west, to be exact, the British sector. This street commemorates the date of the East German Rising of '53. Ironically, part of it is dominated by a huge Soviet war memorial built when the Russians were still being cooperative. Later, they put one up in their own sector, but they still mount Russian sentries here. A good place to get a view of West Berlin is from the top of the radio and television tower in the suburb of Charlottenburg. Even though it's an island in the eastern zone, West Berliners still regard their city as the capital of Western Germany. Here, the streets are busier, the traffic denser than in the east. What about the people here? How do they differ from the other sort of Berliners?
What do young people like you who live and work in Berlin do to amuse yourself in the evening after office hours?
For amusement, well, I think everything other people do in other cities. We have cinema, theaters, concerts. Well, we can take lessons in the evening. For example, I took French lessons for a long time in the evening.
Do you go to any sort of entertainments in the eastern sector?
Yes, we sometimes do. They have a very good opera, perhaps you know about it. And they have very good singers and so.
Do you know many East Berliners?
Well, yes, I do, because my mother usually was born in a part of Berlin, which is now eastern sector, and so her friends, well, almost all of them live in East Berlin, and naturally we meet them and they come here and we go there.
Do you find them easy or difficult to get on with?
Well, I think it's easy to get on with them, but sometimes you feel a bit, well, you are not more than they are, but sometimes, well, you just feel like it, but I don't know why. You really shouldn't, but, well.
They tell me that you can always spot an East Berliner in the street here. Is that true?
Well, sometimes yes, but not always. Because they're sort of, they are dressed up, well, not so fashionable, let me say.
Do you think they spot you when you go over there?
They do. They always do. If I, well, just in the bus or so, well, they're just looking, I don't know, they see the way you are dressed up, it's the fashion. Well, they don't have it, they're not so fashionable.
Myself, I wouldn't say fashionableness was the keynote here either, but the people certainly are better dressed than on the other side of the line. Would he recognize an East Berlin dachshund? Kurfürstendamm, before the war an unimportant street. 80 years ago, little more than a lane, now the heart of the western sector. Of course, whichever sector you're in, you can still lose your way, but it's safer to do it in the west. On the edge of the Tiergarten Park stands a building in which the history of Germany was nearly changed. On the 20th of July 1944, the bomb which was meant to kill Hitler exploded at Rasthof in East Prussia. The generals who planned to revolt assembled here. But Hitler wasn't killed, and the generals were executed in this courtyard afterwards. A plaque recalls their names. And the Reichstag. Remember the fire and the trial? Now the front is in the west and the back is in the east. Near it stands the new Congress Hall, which facetious West Berliners have christened the Pregnant Oyster. 13 years ago, West Berlin started its own university. The Humboldt was in the wrong part of town. I talked to some of the West Berlin counterparts of the young people I'd met at the Humboldt.
Do you get a feeling of being shut in, living in a little sort of island of Eastern territory?
Yes, I've got this feeling very much, and I hope that the situation will change sometime or other.
You come from the Federal Republic where there's
Yes.
compulsory military service in the Bundeswehr.
Yes.
What do you feel about it?
I think as long as the Eastern powers have this great political strength, have a great army, it's necessary in Western Germany too.
What do you feel about the future of Berlin?
I think as long as we have got the guarantees from the British and the English, from the British and the French and the Americans, can still be sure in Berlin.
You think it will go on?
The situation as it is now, I think it will go on and will last still a longer time.
As a Berliner, you're not liable for military service in the Bundeswehr.
I'm glad I am not, because I do not like it. Really.
You don't approve of it?
No, I disapprove of it.
Why is that?
My father has been in the army, and I do not want to be in the army. I've seen all the horrors of the last war, and I'm really not afraid of it, but I do not like it.
If you approach Berlin through the corridor from the west, you reach a checkpoint like this on the motorway as you enter the city. West Berlin police and British, French and American military police control their own traffic in and out. It may seem a bit of a formality, but remember, the corridor runs through the Russian zone. You're not supposed to stop, and a breakdown may mean trouble. So they check your start time, and if you don't show up at the other end when you're expected, they do something about it. Even when you're through the checkpoint on the way to Berlin, you still have a couple of miles to go. The Royal Military Police have the job of patrolling the perimeter in the British sector. In many places, the actual boundary runs down the center of the road, though the Russian wire is set back on its own side. As we drove past, we saw an East German sentry dive for cover when he spotted the camera. We're in the west, the houses are in the east. For 13 years, East-West relations over Berlin have been tense. How long before the next crisis? Berlin was high on the list of topics discussed at Vienna last week.
And so the Berliners live on in their divided city. They'll tell you that it's the true capital of Germany, that it's free and democratic, but of course, exactly what they mean by those words depends on which side of the line they live. Perhaps this confusion over words is one reason why Berliners are so attached to symbols. Symbols like this one, the broken stump of the tower of the old Kaiser William Memorial Church. They're building a new church around it, but this will remain as a symbol. And another symbol is the Freedom Bell, which rings out at midday every day from the town hall in free Berlin.